Hello everyone, welcome to Trade Chat. My name is, I don't know if you guys remember who Panzer is or Trade Chat is, but I used to watch her videos a lot when I was growing up, and I don't think she makes videos anymore, so it's kind of, whatever. Besides the point, today I got some news for you guys. This is pretty much what we know so far going into 8.34 healers. This is going to give us an idea of what healers are going to be looking strong going into 8.3, but additionally, these aren't all of the changes, right? These are just some of the PTR changes that are going out now. Most of these changes, actually all of them, are directed towards PvE, but this obviously affects PvP. And some of the changes I like, some of the changes, you know, we'll get into it, but we can also expect some more changes coming down the road as we get closer to the patch. Some PvP changes, direct PvP changes that will also add on to this, right? So I will update this video when we do get closer to 8.3 and I see some more changes coming out in terms of blue posts. But until then, let's cover what we see so far in regards to healers. The first and most important one, the one that I'm really happy to see, because Resto Druids are doing too well. They're very strong in Mythic Plus currently. I mean, I see some of my friends healing these Mythic Plus dungeons on a Resto Druid, and they're not even healing, they're doing damage the entire time, and they're able to just heal with Efflorescence and like a Wild Growth. Well, Resto Druids are seeing a 9% mastery nerf. Their mastery is one of the strongest stats for Resto Druids, because when you stack on hots and you have multiple hots rolling, well, different hots that is, right? So a regrowth and a rejuve. If you have those rolling, you're going to be, increases your healing based on how much mastery you have, right? That is the mastery of the Resto Druid, just stacking hots, and the more hots you have on a target, the more healing you're going to be doing. This nerf will most likely make it so that their healing is going to be, well, you know, substantially, I hope substantially less. And I think in that effect, we'll see maybe some reductions on the amount of Resto Druids that we're seeing in Arena. Again, I don't think it's going to change anything too crazy, but it definitely is a nerf, and I think it is justified, as Resto Druids are absolutely ridiculous. Okay, now moving on to the Mistweaver Monk, a healer that I used to play a lot, not so much lately, and we're seeing some changes to Rising Mist, and is now seeing a 33% increase. This talent is Garbanzo Beans, okay? It's a talent for PvE, a Mythic Plus talent. Well, potentially people were excited about it for Mythic Plus, but turns out it's not healing for as much people would like it to, so we won't cover that. We're seeing, the main buff here is a buff to Life of Cocoon. It will now absorb 55% of the caster's maximum health. This is a way to keep the ability static throughout the expansion, so now instead of it just being like, oh, the health pools are getting too large, it's not healing for as much, it's not absorbing as much as you want it to, now as much health as you have is as much as the ability is going to absorb or shield. So this is the same change that we always see for Mistweaver Monks. This is why, for me personally, I'm not playing it as much anymore, because the class has, for me, a lot of fundamental issues in terms of its toolkit. There are some cool things about the class, but there's no walls. You have no defensive that you can apply to your allies, and you're just a heal bot. And I know a lot of healers are like that, but I think for the Mistweaver specifically, you really are just all about sitting back and healing, and I don't find it as fun. But that's besides the point. Do I think this change is going to be game-changing for Monks? I think it's definitely a nice buff. I think they needed it, but Cocoon is already on such a short CD that giving it a even larger absorb might be kind of annoying or a nuisance, but I don't think it's game-changing. We always see this for Mistweaver Monks. In Legion, we saw this, where at some point in Legion, the shield wasn't absorbing as much anymore because health pools were getting so large, and we see this exact same buff. I think I called this, or I talked about this, maybe like going into Battle for Azeroth. I said, why won't we be playing the Monk as much? Because we always see the same buffs, and it always involves either healing throughput buff, and they get nerfed because the healing is too much, and then they say, oh, well, the healing's too much, so we have to do something else, and then they just buff Cocoon. And this is exactly what we're seeing once again. Same thing in Legion, same thing now. Do I think it's game-changing? No. Do I think it helps Monks? Yes. Okay, now moving on to the Holy Paladin. Holy Paladins are seeing a Glimmer of Light nerf. This means nothing, because Glimmer of Light is already so minimal in terms of how much healing throughput it provides. If you look at your healing breakdown, it's Holy Light, Holy Shock, and then Glimmer is like very low down there if you're speccing into this trait. Avenger's Might is also maybe an option you could go into that I think some people like if you're playing melee wings. And there are other, basically you just want Indomitable Justice. There's not really great Azerite traits for the Holy Paladin. Radiant Incandescence is another one that you can go for. This is a PvE nerf. This isn't a PvP nerf. The healing has been reduced by 12%. Okay, it healed for nothing anyway. It's good for rating, and now can only be applied to a maximum of 8 targets. I mean, again, this is just a rating change, right? You're never going to have 8 people in an arena. Maybe in Battlegrounds it's decent, but overall, I don't think it's a major nerf. If anything, I think this means Paladins are going to be very strong following the Resto Druid nerf as well. Okay, now moving on to the Discipline Priest, where things get somewhat interesting here. So when looking at this, you're like, Discipline Priest changes like nerfs somewhat. What's going on here? So if you guys do not know, Disc Priests are one of the strongest raid healers currently in the current raid tier, but they're very bad at Mythic Plus. They're one of the worst healers for Mythic Plus, and a lot of these changes are representing that, right? Resto Druids are actually not very good in raids, but they're very good at Mythic Plus, and we're seeing some nerfs to them in terms of their healing and their ability to do damage for Mythic Plus, and it's the same thing for raiding for Discipline Priests. But they're getting a 15% increase now to Penance, a healing increase, because they need more single target healing to make, Penance a more attractive trait, or ability that is. They want Discipline Priest to kind of have more healing throughput, but deal less damage, which is why we're also seeing now Atonement nerfs. Atonement now heals for 50% instead of 55%. That's a nerf, a small nerf, but it is a nerf. Purge the Wicked, is damage reduction is reduced by 10%. This is kind of a nerf for Arena, especially because, not a massive nerf, but it is a nerf because a lot of your damage is Purge the Wicked or Shadow Word Pain, which is seeing a 9% nerf. You can just round it up to 10 if you want. Powered Solace damage is also reduced by 10%. These aren't massive nerfs, but they're like, they're nerfs. They're just minor. You are going to see a little bit less damage from Discipline Priest. Not a lot, but it is going to be less. But we're also now seeing a mastery buff by 12%. So your mastery as a Discipline Priest works as when you have Atonement on the target, you heal them for more, and your absorptions on that target are greater. So if you have Atonement, your Shadow Mends are going to be healing for more. If you have Atonement on the target, your Penances are going to be healing for more, and now 15% more. And your powered shields are going to be even larger on that target if they have Atonement. And now that buff for 12%, I think is pretty big. I mean, it's not massive, but it definitely is going to be noticeable, especially with the 15% penance healing increase. But this is something that's funny, and I think this probably should go. Schism now increases damage done from priest spells and abilities only. And I went ahead and tested this myself. This includes, it will no longer affect your Crucible of the Flame, Concentrated Flame. It will no longer affect trinkets either, obviously. So Schism, the way it was working right now, is players were, activating their Schism, and then they were following it up with a Concentrated Flame, or, Crucible of the Flame, whatever the fuck you want to call it. That ability would scale off of your Schism, which is 40% damage increase, right? So that would be hitting 40% harder on the target. Your Voodoo Doll trinket, your rock-crusted Voodoo Doll that you would have, would also be dealing 40% more damage. So you were dealing a shitload of damage with Schism. And now, as we see going into the next patch, it will no longer be the case. And this was the same thing for raiding, right? As a Disc Priest in raids, you are firing off Crucibles sometimes, and you are firing off trinkets and using damage into the Schism, and you're not going to be seeing that anymore. I think this makes Schism a much less attractive talent now. Do I think some priests will still run it? For sure. I think it's still going to be good with Penance and Solace, and just increasing damage from those ends. But obviously it's going to be way less attractive because it will not be working with your Concentrated Flame, and it will not be working with trinkets. So overall, what we're seeing here is a healing increase and a damage nerf, which I think is in the right direction. I think the new spec for Discipline Priests will be more of this Penance heavy spec, where you use things like Castigation rather than Schism, because that can be used offensively and defensively. And I think people will start using Contrition a bit more, maybe. And overall, it'll be a more healing intensive build, but you're still dealing damage. This does not mean that you're not going to be dealing damage, because you still have the Atonement mechanic, and you're still going to be firing off offensive penances. You're still going to be using Purge the Wicked most likely. You're still going to be using Solace most likely. So you're still going to be doing damage. Overall, what does this mean? Not just for Discipline Priests, but all the other specs. I think these are all good changes. I think that Resto Druids are too strong. I think Discipline Priests are dealing too much damage. And I think Mystiverse do need a little bit of a buff, but I'm also looking forward to seeing additional PvP changes on top of these PvE changes. I don't think these PvE changes in terms of healers these are bad changes at all. I think they're just doing way too much damage. For Discipline Priests, I think Resto Druids are too strong, and they're doing too much healing, and I think these all line up very well. The only thing here is that Holy Paladins are already really strong, and they didn't really see a nerf. So again, I'm hoping for more PvP changes, but I also want to add this in. Vision of Perfection is also seeing a buff, and I'm sure this is to make it more attractive in PvE. The proc rate has been increased by 12%, which might be very strong for Holy Paladins. I know a lot of Paladins use Conflict Major and then, Vision Minor, but this might make it a much more attractive essence to put in your major slot. A 12% increased proc rate. It's pretty solid. But, you know, Holy Paladins aren't really seeing any nerfs here, and they're already super fucking strong in PvP. We're not even close to the patch cycle yet, but this is kind of what's going on the PTR so far, and these are my general thoughts. I think Discipline Priests are going to be healing for a bit more. It doesn't change too much. I think they're still going to be a good healer in Rogue Mage, and in jungle, etc. I think Holy Paladins are still going to be one of the strongest healers. I think Resto Druids are still going to be one of the strongest healers, but I think this makes Holy Paladins, you know, move up there and, you know, maybe even surpass the Resto Druid in some cases, because a lot of people are playing Rogue Mage Paladin anyway. And I think Mistweavers, you know, they're getting a little bit of a buff. As far as Resto Shamans go, I don't know so much. Nothing's really been showed so far, but I'll keep you guys updated in the future. Just a heads up, I will be streaming later this evening, the day that you're watching this video, or the day that it is released, this Friday night. I'll be having some beers, doing some viewer games, doing some Mythic Plus, and most importantly, some arenas. If you guys want to come chill and hang out, you're more than welcome to do so, and my stream will be somewhere here on the screen. Anyways, that will do it for this video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. If you have any questions or my thoughts, you can also comment in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. But with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.